Thank you everyone for joining this AMX New Product Launch webinar. My name is Lane Shannon and I'm Content Marketing Manager for Harman Pro Global. This call is being recorded and we will share the recording on our AMX training channel once it is available. Also, everyone is muted to keep down noise levels, but there is a Q&A function at the bottom of the screen where you can ask any questions you may have about the new products, and we'll have time at the end to answer them. If you can, try not to use the chat for your questions, just the Q&A. That's really helpful for us. Today, we're thrilled to be launching and introducing you to a powerful yet affordable new family of 4K 60 HDMI matrix switching, window processing, and HDMI to USB capture products that are perfect for supporting software-based conferences and lectures like Zoom and Teams, or just about any AV delivery need. Before we go any further, we'd like to play a short product overview video to give you a first look at these products, and we'll be right back to discuss them further, as well as their capabilities and key benefits. And now I'm joined by my friends and colleagues, Harman Professionals, Jeff Birch, Director of Video Control, and Colin Mahoney, Product Marketing Manager, who will take it from here, present the rest of this launch. And now I'll turn it over to Jeff to kick off today's presentation.
Thanks, Lane. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit about some new products that we have coming to market here pretty quickly. We're going to go over a few things. We'll talk about the products, obviously. We'll do quick application spotlights. Then we're going to go through a quick summary with pricing and delivery, and then we'll have we'll have some time for some short Q&A at the end. So let's jump right in with product overviews. So we're launching a full range of products, video switching and HDMI to USB capture products, all geared around 4K 60, 444, HDMI 2.0, HDCP 2.2, all the full highest level video resolution capability. So we're going to be talking about really three categories of products. We're going to talk about video matrix switchers. These are small scale, smaller size video matrix switchers that go up to 8x8. We're going to talk about a windowing processor that takes up to 4 inputs and windows them all onto a single display. And we're going to talk about an HDMI to USB capture device. So jumping right into the matrix switchers, there's 4 different products, price range from $800 to $4,800 MSRP US. These are all really affordable video routing solutions for small to medium-sized installations. Like I said, 4K 60, 444 video, HDR10 plus support. They all have HTML web interface on them and an open API. So when you get perfect video, You get EDID management support so that you can manage what resolutions are coming from your source devices. You get audio de-embedding so that you can deliver audio to analog outputs. You have support eventually through an upgrade for age control, so make it compatible with our future CloudWorks ecosystem that we're working on. So these are going to be prepared for the future roadmap. We have multiple control methods. I think that's a big part of these products. All of the products here have an open controllable API through several methods, telnet or SSH or a serial port. So you don't, these are not part of a walled garden. You're not required to have net links. These are great products if you, maybe in applications where we know we don't have control or have a small chance of getting control. These are places that we can still get into to capture the video distribution pieces. Because this can be controlled by any control system out there. And it really completes the portfolio. If you're familiar with the AMX video switching portfolio, we've got large frame, card-based switchers. We've got things like the DVX, and these kind of fill that role in that small to medium-sized video switching portfolio. So this is what they all look like from the front view. The larger units all have little LCD displays on the front. You can get some really good information like the IP address of the box, a really important piece to know about to get to the web page. All of these also have the ability to put an OSD piece of information up on a connected screen. So if you connect something to a video output, you can get the OSD menu to pop up that will also show you the IP address. So this is the 402. There's 4 models. This is a 4x2 matrix switcher. It's a small form factor. It's less than a full rack width. It can be mounted under a table or on our V-style rack trays. It does not come with any mounting solution, but it is supported by all of our V-style mounting accessories. So V-style brackets, V-style trays, all of that. All of these units have a separate audio out for each HDMI out. All of these matrix switchers are audio follow video on the output. So whatever video is going to HDMI out 1, you will have that audio available to you both on the HDMI out and on the analog out as well. They're all network connected. They have serial port control, network control, like I said. So here's the 4x2. Here's the 6x2. So similar, really all the same features as the 4x2. This is now a full rack width. So it does come with rack ears, so you can mount this into standard equipment rack. And all the same feature set, just a couple of additional inputs. And we move to the 4x4. Again, a separate analog output for each video output for a 4x4 matrix switcher. And then we move to the largest 8x8 matrix switcher. I did mention the web page. There's this should look familiar for anybody who's opened up a web configuration page for any of our AMX products lately. We follow the same look and feel. It's the same sort of menuing setup, the same design guidelines. So all of this should look and feel familiar to you when you get into it. The switchers also have a switching page to them. It's a nice simplified switching page. You can just click on a radio button to make a switch. There's all and none on the extremes of the matrix here. And you can also click on any of the inputs or outputs and you get a little configuration window that pops up over here on the right. There's some configuration pieces that you can make for EDID adjustments or CEC adjustments, that kind of thing. Comparison across the product line between the 4x2 to the 8x8. You can see the price. You can see the frame size. A couple of key things is that the 4x2 supports auto switching. It's the only one of the new products coming out that does this. So this 4x2 works well even in an installation where you're not going to have any control at all. You have some configuration pieces so that you can set what the default is, which inputs take priority. So you can have say a room PC connected to the default input, and then you can have a higher priority room PC input. If somebody connects in their laptop, then it automatically switches to that source. When somebody disconnects their laptop, it falls back to the default room PC, and you don't need any control. If you do want control, like I said before, it supports the Open Control API. That's a nice feature of all of these SKUs. For comparison, we put the Pro 1 0808, for those of you familiar with that. It is similar to the 8x8. It's an 8x8 matrix switcher, but it has an additional 4 HD-base-T outputs that mirror 4 of the HDMI outputs. So don't get confused in the model naming scheme. These PR dash are the new SKUs that we're bringing out. Pricing is a key thing with these boxes. I think it's a key competitive advantage. If you compare the pricing to these matrix switchers to any of our closest competitors, you'll find that they're typically 20 to 40% less in price. So there's a significant cost savings to our customers for going with these switchers. It's a bit of a unique situation for AMX. We're not usually the low price, but in this case, I think these are some of the lowest priced offerings that you'll find for this level of video matrix switching. So now let's talk about the windowing processor. This is a really nice box. It's got 4 HDMI inputs and a couple of HDMI outputs, and you can use the box in 2 ways. The primary way that people will use it is as a windowing processor. And when you use it as a windowing processor, the 2 HDMI outputs are mirrored. They will always show the identical content. But those 2 outputs can show any or all of the HDMI inputs in a windowed fashion. So I can show quad view, or I can show picture-in-picture, or what have you. If you are not using it as a windowing processor, you can use it as a 4x2 matrix switcher. So in that case, the 2 outputs can be independent, and you can switch video independently from input to output. You just won't have any mirroring at that point. So again, we have all the advantage of the 4K 6444 HDR10. This does have scaling on the outputs. Since it's doing window processing, it has the ability to scale all of the sources. It also can scale to the resolution of the display. When you're using it as a matrix switcher, it does seamless switching. Even when you switch between window modes, it's a very seamless, very quick switch from one windowed mode to a different windowed mode. So if you're moving from picture-in-picture to quad view, it just changes nearly instantaneously. You do get 4 inputs, and you can see here sort of quad view, how these 4 inputs get windowed onto a single display. There's audio pass-through plus audio de-embedding, and you have a fair amount of flexibility in what audio that you send to an HDMI output into the analog outputs. Obviously, if you are windowing these, you don't want to hear all 4 pieces of audio at the same time. That would be a mess. So you can choose which of the sources, which audio you want to route to the HDMI outputs and to the analog outputs. Again, multiple control methods, open API through Telnet, SSH, RS-232. So not walled into the Netlink's garden. Available as a great windowing processor for any installation, regardless of what control products being used in the space. And it's a really nice complement to Zoom and Teams, where it can be difficult if you've got multiple cameras or multiple source devices you're trying to share with people on the far end. This is a way to window those together and show multiple pieces of content at the same time. And when we get to the UVC-1 here in a second, you'll see how these 2 really can work together. So here's the front and the back. Again, 4 HDMI inputs, 2 outputs. These are mirrored when in windowing mode. You've got the analog outputs, you've got serial control and network. And you've got all of these have nice buttons on the front panel, mostly for the installer, so that they can make sure that things are set up correctly. They can do some quick switching and check sources and that sort of thing. The web interface is similar to what we've seen before. You can do some configuration on the inputs. You can select EDID, for example, For the outputs, you can choose scaling. You can configure some OSD information. And then in the windowing screen, this is a really powerful interface for configuring your windows. So this is the quad view that you're seeing here. It's a little hard to see, but there's little handles down in the bottom right corner here. You can drag the sizing of these windows dynamically anywhere you want. You can click in the menu bar at the top of the window and move the window around anywhere you want. You can also use the controls on the right-hand side here to set X and Y coordinate and window width and height. You can set the priority independently for each window to decide which window is going to be on top of the other. There's some really nice tools like this border control. This is nice. Probably not something you'd leave on for the customer, but when you're configuring things and you don't necessarily have 4 sources already connected, you can draw a border, and each window can have a different color border around it. And as you're making changes, you can see the effect happen dynamically on the output that you may be looking at, and you can see the borders of the windows so that you can see how they're going to look. So really nice web interface for configuring. You've got several presets already installed for you, plus you've got your own custom presets that you can create and recall at any time. So let's move on to the UVC-1. This is an HDMI to USB capture device. So this takes HDMI in from any HDMI source, like an HDMI camera, maybe an HDMI PTZ camera that you have, or a document camera, or even a PC directly. It takes that HDMI in up to 4K 6444, and it converts it to a USB video UVC standard format video output that a PC can consume. So again, on the input supports 4K 6444. On the USB output, it supports up to 4K 30 frames per second. It does scale, so you've got a few options that you can choose on the USB capture output side. You can choose 1080p or 720p if you don't want to deliver all the bandwidth required for a large 4K. You've got analog audio embedding, so you can inject audio separately, separate from the video if you need to. And that all gets combined then on the USB out. So it looks as like both a video device and an audio device. It looks very similar to your PC. It looks just like a camera when you connect it in. It's UVC standard. It follows the UVC standard, which is a USB protocol standard. It's supported by all the major operating systems with no need to install drivers. It's recognized by all the major video conferencing applications like Zoom and Teams and WebEx and Google Meet, and the list goes on. So just like you might pull a USB web camera out of a box and plug it in and expect it to work, this is the same. You pull this out of the box, you plug it in, your PC recognizes it. So again, you've got an HDMI input and an analog audio input. You've got a USB-C output. This is USB-C that carries USB video. It doesn't carry HDMI video directly. So it can be confusing with USB-C ports because they can carry a lot of different types of information, but this is just USB 3 protocol support on the USB-C connector. It does come with an application that you can download from our website. You don't need this application to use the UVC-1 at all, but it's a nice utility to have with you. It allows you to recognize the UVC-1 boxes that you have connected to your PC. It lets you see status about signal lock, resolution, and it gives you some options to change the edict. So let's look at some applications. Why do we have these boxes? Why did we make these boxes? So let's say we've got an HDMI web camera. You have a web camera that doesn't have a USB output on it, and you really want to use this for your PC. This is a simple solution here. You plug in the HDMI to the UVC-1 4K, and then you plug USB into your PC, and it makes the HDMI camera look like a USB camera to your PC. Your PC doesn't know the difference. If we look at the matrix switcher, so I don't know that anybody really needs an application diagram for how a matrix switcher works, but here it is. You've got a number of source devices that you can connect in to HDMI inputs, and then you've got matrix switching output. One output can go to the display, and here the other output we have drawn to the UVC1. Because this is a matrix switcher, you can deliver different video to each of these boxes. So you can be seeing one thing on your display and sending a different source device, say, into your PC. So let's say we've got more inputs, more complicated system. We can move up to our DVX 4K products. And now we've got lots of inputs, multiple cameras, document cameras, PCs. We can have an HDMI output going to this UVC1 into the USB, one of the many HDMI outputs that we have, or even through a DX link distance transport, the HDMI output of the receiver connecting into the UVC1. So let's look at the windowing processor now. Again, we've got multiple HDMI inputs going to a couple of outputs. You see that we're in windowing mode, so these two outputs are going to be identical. But you can see that each of the source devices, you've got a couple of cameras here being windowed. You've got the PC being windowed here in the top right corner of the screen, and you've got the document camera filling this larger left-hand section. And again, this is all customizable. You can customize these windows in terms of their location and their size. You can save them as presets or just send commands that move and resize them dynamically. And what's really neat is if you combine this window processor solution with the UVC1 4K, now you've got a windowed view that you can deliver back into your PC as a web camera. So now if you are sharing content over a conference call, a video call, you don't just have to show your camera. You can show multiple cameras. You can show video from another PC. You can show video from a document camera. So it makes it really easy to share a number of source devices simultaneously, which is difficult to do in just the typical Teams or Zoom app interface. So quick product summary here, the SKUs that we talked about. These are the SKU numbers. You may notice that these don't start with FG, which everybody has come to expect after the several decades of looking at AMX product numbers. Harman Pro in general has moved to a new numbering system, so all AMX SKUs will start with AMX. These are the orderable numbers here. So where you would normally have had an FG something, this AMX PR0402, that's the part number that you order. Model name, description, there's MSRPs laid out for you, and here's availability. This is availability when we expect it to be available in our warehouses. This is not just when we are shipping from our manufacturing facility. This takes into account transit time to the best of our ability. So this is when you should actually see these in warehouses that should be available in our warehouses to deliver to customers, distributors. So just wrapping up, there's the product family again. You see on the right, all 4K 60 line of products. You've got multiple 4K 60 matrix switchers. You've got the windowing processor, and you've got the HDMI to USB capture device. All right. Here is a QR code you can use if you want to get some additional new product information about these SKUs. And at this point, we can open it up to questions. Colin, you can let me know if we've got.
Yeah, we got a lot of good questions while you're going through there.
Fantastic. I don't know if that's good or bad.
No, there's actually a lot of real intelligent questions in here that are going to be good to cover. Some of them did get covered right after they got asked, but I think we'll review some of those anyway. So back to the switches, the PR series switches. How fast is the source switching?
Switching for these, since they're not scaling on the output. So we're talking about these. I'll get back to that line. So there's no scaling on the output. So these switch within a couple of seconds. It all depends on the content that you're going from and to. Some of it can depend on the display that you're going to as well. They don't have scaling on the output, so they will resync when you switch. But in general, we've done actually quite a lot of testing of these. We've done a lot of optimization, and it's around the 2-second range for video switching.
And most of that delay is based on the display kind of re-handshaking with that HDCP, correct?
So a lot of it is HDCP. Obviously, if you're dealing with HDCP content, some of that handshaking takes an extra time. If you're not dealing with HDCP content, it's going to be on the quicker side of that 2 seconds.
Okay.
Now, the windowing processor, because it has a scale output, it does pretty much seamless switching. Not just switching from one input to another, but switching from one window orientation to another. So it's a very clean, very seamless switch.
And you just mentioned those PR series switches do not have scalers built in, so there's no transitions, there's no switch through black or that built in.
That's correct. I mean, it does. We do blank the screen during video switches, but there's no fancy transitions. There's no, swipes or folds or anything like that.
But you did the windowing processor is a seamless switcher.
The windowing processor is, yes, and it's the reason that we made it so that you could use it as a 4x2 matrix switcher. If you don't need the windowing processor, but you're really looking for a fast seamless switcher with scaling on the outputs, it's a fantastic switching experience.
And it's a software switch between those two modes. So, I mean,
right.
In some unique applications where it's a flexible room, you may be able to use the same device for, in both two different modes, depending on how the room is being set up that specific day. That's
correct. Yep. You don't have to configure it to be one or the other permanently. It's software selected through the configurator, through the API that we have available.
So you mentioned it a couple times, but they all have an open API, so they're all controllable from AMX or really any custom control system or other control system.
Yes.
We're also offering, we're putting together a module,
yes.
So that they can be controlled, even easier through a Netlink system, an AMX control system, but they're not native Netlinks devices.
That's correct. They are not native Netlinks devices. There will be duet modules. We will get them. They will be part of usable as part of RPM here in the probably late this quarter, early next quarter. There will be a duet module available for them. If the API is also a pretty straightforward API, and it's not difficult to code them even in Netlinks directly if that's what you want.
Yeah, and one of the things that we did with the APIs, we made sure that it would be compatible with like Zoom built-in controls from Zoom Rooms, so that you can control it directly from the Zoom Rooms controller app. You don't even have to have a third-party control system in those type of applications.
Correct.
A couple questions about audio on the switchers. Does audio follow video on all of the units?
So audio follows on all of the matrix switchers, all of these Precis matrix switchers, audio follows video. So whatever output, whatever source device you have routed to HDMI out 1, the audio for that source will go to audio out 1. So audio output 1 and HDMI output 1 are always the same. Whatever video is on HDMI out 1, the audio that correlates to that video is on audio out 1. And likewise for HDMI out 2 and audio out 2. And they're not switchable independently. On the windowing processor, you can choose which, there is breakaway and break-in audio. So you can break the audio away from the HDMI input and re-embed it into a different HDMI output, which will then also mean that it's on a different analog audio output.
So on the PR series switchers, it's yes, audio follow video always. And on the windowing processor, you have full matrix routing of the audio independent of the video on the HDMI, and then the analog outputs just mirror whatever's on the HDMI outputs.
Correct.
Okay. There's not volume control or DSP.
No, there is a mute. You can disable audio on an output. There's also a mute, an audio mute, but there's no volume control. There's no DSP.
Okay. In the web interface, the configuration interface for the PR series switches, is there any customization where we can change kind of the input and output names?
Yes.
Oh, there is. Okay. Fantastic.
Yes, you can change preset names. You can change input and output names.
There's a question about latency. Do we have kind of like a published latency? I know you were saying that it's very quick, but for the windowing processor, is there a latency for those scalars?
The latency is very small. It's a standard scaling, roughly a frame of latency. It's not anything unusual from anything else that we've scaled. All of our DVXs have been scaling. They have scaled outputs, and it's a similar latency. It's just the small amount of time it takes for the scaler to capture part of a frame and scale. So latency is not really a topic or an issue with these. It's effectively instantaneous, and you don't really see it. It's no different than any other product that we have with video scaling.
Maybe it's a good time to mention kind of the SVSI windowing processors and how this is similar and different. Because in what it can do, it's actually very, very similar. And actually even the configuration is very, very similar to what we have with our SVSI windowing processors. Maybe that question comes from some familiarity with those, because I think when you see an SVSI windowing processor, you do see a little bit of latency, but that's not necessarily the windowing processing part. It's
that's
decoding
the
and the encoding kind of in the chain.
Part,
because
correct.
An SVSI windowing processor is basically this windowing processor plus a decoder and an encoder.
Yeah,
all
plus
in one
multiple
box. So,
multiple
right.
decoders and an encoder all in a single box. And this does work very similar to an SVSI window processor, just with the decoders and encoders stripped off of them. It makes it a nice companion for, say, our N2300 product line that doesn't have a window processor. So you could use this in conjunction with N2300 decoders and an encoder and get window processing with those SVSI products. We did try to make the feature set of the windowing very similar to the SVSI windowing capability. We even tried to copy the web interface, so that if you are used to using the windowing processor in our SVSI product line, you should be very familiar with how it works in this window processor.
And then if you do pair it up with SVSI, with those decoders, you get kind of video wall processing. So you can scale this out to a video wall to multiple displays.
Right, you get all the great functionality you get with all of our SVSI boxes already in the video wall applications. Yep.
I think you showed a little bit on the, it's a static image where we're showing the screenshot, but the ability to kind of customize the presets for the windowing processor. So customize what the size of the windows are, customize picture-in-picture presets.
Right, you get multiple presets in this dropdown. So you choose the preset. You can give these names. Maybe I should have given them names before I shot the screenshot, but this is how it comes sort of default. So you get multiple presets that you can choose from, and then each preset, when you choose it, you can move things around and resize things. You can change the priority, and then that becomes a recallable preset once you've set it. And it's a simple command that you make to just recall that preset. You can also change which source goes to which window. So if you like a particular layout, you've got a picture-in-picture layout, for example, you don't have to make one preset with window 1 the main screen and window 2 the pit. and then another preset with window 2, the main screen, and window 1, the PIP. You can just have the one preset of that window layout. And then there's separate commands that you can use to say, send input 1 to window 1, and send input 2 to window 2, or send input 2 to window 1 and send input 1 to window 2. I think I got that right.
I got totally lost, but I think the key is that we can do pretty much whatever we want, which is nice.
The windows basically work like outputs in the switching commands when you're in a windowing mode. So, and you can kind of see that. I guess you can't see that. This scrolls down here, and you can choose for a window, you can choose which source you want going to that window. It's kind of off the screen to the bottom over here.
And then, we're showing configuring this in the web interface, which is built into the windowing processor, but we can also change, I would imagine we can change all of this from the API.
Correct. You can recall presets from the API, and you can resize and move windows from the API.
Okay, cool. Okay, for the UVC-1, the HDMI to USB capture device does not support HDCP content, correct? You can bring you're not going to be able to deliver HDCP out to the output device. So anytime that you get it out of the HDMI world, you're not going to be able to deliver that copy protected content if it's identified as content that's copy protected and not to be forwarded on outside of the HDMI world. And then there are a couple of questions about how the UVC-1 interacts with UVC's content or UVC software or software video conferencing applications like Zoom and Teams. So what will it look like from the software side? So if I'm in Zooms, how does my source show up that's coming in on the UVC-1?
So if you're in Zoom and you want to turn on your camera, for example, you would go down to your camera and start your video. There's the arrow there. You click the arrow, and if you have multiple cameras connected, you will see a list of cameras connected. This UVC-1 4K will show up in that list of available cameras for you to choose from. And you select that camera, you say share my video, and whatever UVC video is coming out of the UVC-1, that's what you will share in your that's what you'll display as your camera in Zoom or Teams or WebEx. So to those applications, it just looks like another USB camera that you've connected.
And most of those softwares make it pretty easy to switch between multiple cameras. And I know they're adding new features all the time, so they may be adding the ability to, show multiple cameras at the same time. But that's also one of the reasons we really think the windowing processor is going to be a great addition to those software video conferencing type of applications, because it really kind of gives you ultimate flexibility for what you display. So you can take your multiple cameras and then your different source devices, different content. You can put those in using the windowing processor into a single feed that then goes into your software video to Zoom. So you have control over what gets shown on the far side when you're using that.
Exactly. And in fact, the way I have it set up at my desk is I've got one of the outputs of my laptop, my docked laptop. I have that going into the windowing processor. And I have a couple of other sources going into that windowing processor. But one of the modes of the windowing processor is just unwindowed, right? Full screen, whatever. So during my day-to-day, I can use it as just a full screen. I see the output of my PC full screen on my display, but I can change that to be one of the windowed modes that I have, where I'm showing not only my desktop, but other HDMI devices that I have plugged into the windowing processor. And I can plug I plug one of those outputs then into my UVC-1, bring it back into my PC, and now that looks like the camera that I can share.
When you switch sources to the UVC-1 or plug something in new, how long does it take to kind of lock onto that and send it to the PC?
It all depends on what you're switching from and to, but it's not long. It's a few seconds. It's another reason it makes a nice pairing with the windowing processor, because it's scaled and that's a seamless switcher. The UVC-1 doesn't even know that anything is changing on it, so you can switch sources very quickly when you connect it to the windowing processor.
Perfect. There's a question about audio on the UVC-1. It looks like there was some confusion about audio output. So I guess what's the relation between those, the HDMI audio input and the analog audio input, and what comes out on USB?
So what comes out USB is both video and audio, just like a USB web camera with a microphone in it. So just like in Teams, when I say start my video and I have a list of video sources, cameras, I can choose the camera that I want. When I want to connect audio, I also have a list in Teams. I can click the little arrow and it will show me, here's all the audio devices that we've discovered. And one of those will look like a microphone coming from the UVC-1 4K, and you can select that. What audio gets sent into the PC over that USB can be either the HDMI input, and that would be the default, or if you have a separate audio source, you can bring in audio on the separate connector here, and that will be the audio that gets routed to the USB output.
And you do have the ability to kind of mute the audio. Like if there's audio coming in on the HDMI, you can choose not to send that out on the USB if you'd like.
Correct. You can disable the audio on the USB out.
Does the UVC have any recording capabilities?
No, it just is a translator from HDMI to USB. There's no recording capability.
So certainly with software on the PC or Mac, you could record it.
Correct.
The windowing processor is a seamless switcher. Are there any transition effects that we can apply? Okay. Yes, the windowing, all of the devices, all the switchers and the windowing processor, they can be remotely controlled via the API. We have serial control and IP control built into those.
Correct.
I'm not exactly sure what this question is, but it's about the UVC-1. It's about USB and HDMI. So with this device, it's specifically to kind of translate HDMI video from a device like an HDMI camera or an HDMI document camera or some other video source, a traditional HDMI video source, and then it translates that into USB video using UVC, which is kind of the built-in USB way of handling video. It's
video encoded to the USB UVC format standard. So it looks just like, you buy a USB web camera. That camera doesn't have an HDMI out, it has a USB out. Your PC doesn't have an HDMI input on it, so you couldn't really use it easily if it had one. But you can use the USB out because your PC recognizes UVC-1 as a standard format. So it's bringing video in from your web camera over that USB connection as a UVC video that the PC recognizes automatically.
And this is a good question about USB because it can be very confusing. So we have a USB-C output port. And the question is about, is that compatible with USB-A? Is that downward compatible?
Yeah, it's USB 3. The thing to remember is the protocol more than the connector. So USB-C is just a connector. It's not a format of any type. With a USB-C connector, you can have USB 3, USB 2, USB 1, you can have DisplayPort, you can have HDMI, you can have a number of different kinds of signals. You can even have Ethernet over a USB-C connection. We don't support anything on that USB-C connection except for USB 3, USB 2 protocol. So what's coming out, whatever you connect to, it is USB 2 or USB 3, and you can connect that USB 2 or 3 signal into any port on your PC that accepts USB 2 or USB 3 connections, whether that's an A style or a micro or a mini or whatever. As long as it supports the USB 2 or USB 3 protocol, you can connect to it.
So, and we actually ship a USB 3.0 cable that is
Yes.
USB-C connector on one end and USB-A connector on the other end. That's what we ship, because that's what we just is still probably the most common connector on a laptop these days is a USB-A. That's kind of
Correct.
the traditional rectangular USB connector.
Yes, the cable that we ship is a USB-C to USB-A cable, and you can use that. You can also, if you have a USB-C input, you can connect USB-C to USB-C using the USB-C to USB-C cable. But again, it will just be the USB 3 format or USB 2. Won't be any of those other USB-C capable formats that we talked about.
There's a question about exactly what AV codecs are supported on the UBC-1. I'm not sure that we have that in the presentation, but we do definitely have that on the data sheet, which is available on the product page right now. Or the quick start guide, it has that as well. So the UBC-1 is not Teams certified, but it does work with Teams and many other of those kind of software conferencing applications or UVC applications.
Because it comes in like a camera, it works with any of those Zoom or Teams or WebEx or Google Meet. It looks just like a normal camera. So there's no hardware or audio or sizing issues related with being certified with any of those. It is a compatible UVC stream that works with all of those.
On the PR matrix switchers, is there kind of like a video mute? Can you mute the output?
I am fairly confident there is. I think we could double check that. I'm pretty. I didn't capture the whole. This isn't the entire switcher page. You can see that this is cut off here. So there's more stuff around this page, and I'm pretty sure that there is a way to mute. At the very least, you can always switch an output to none, so that the output isn't switched to any video source.
I love this softball question about TP Control, TPI Pro, and how the UVC. Yeah, we should have.
Yeah, this is actually a fantastic companion to the TPC TPI Pro software application, because if you're familiar with it, you recognize that the TPC TPI Pro software app requires video coming into the app. The app is running on a PC. Those PCs don't typically have HDMI inputs on them to bring that video in. And so an HDMI USB capture device like this one is exactly what you have to bring multiple video sources into the app. So absolutely a terrific companion. If you are using the TPI Pro app, you should absolutely pick up a couple of these HDMI to USB capture devices, because they're a perfect companion piece for it.
On that, do we have a specified power requirement for, I mean, this is a USB powered device, the
It's a
UVC
standard
one.
USB power. I don't remember the power requirement, but it's well within the specs of what any PC will be able to deliver.
Okay. So we don't have like a comprehensive list of cables, or especially kind of, this question is specifically about hybrid copper fiber USB extenders and that kind of stuff that it would work with. But, you know, it should be within the standards. So it should work hopefully with the vast majority of those devices.
Yeah, we haven't tested it. It's really hard to test with a large quantity of cables, but it does ship with a cable that we support. And then any USB cable that is specified for USB 3, especially, if it's certified for USB 3, 5 megabit per second or better, then it should function.
Sorry, I want to understand this question. So this question is, I think it's asking for a future feature that we may have built in. So the UVC has the 2 HDMI, or the 2 audio inputs technically. I mean, you can take audio in on the HDMI and you can take audio in on the analog audio input. And then this question is, it would be nice if you could, over the USB from the PC, select which of those inputs the audio is coming from. And my understanding is that's exactly how it works.
You can. The configuration tool that is available from our website, when you launch that configuration tool, you can configure whether you want audio coming in from the HDMI port or whether you want audio coming in from the from the analog audio input port.
Okay, and then still a little bit of confusion around the audio routing on the windowing processor. It's a little bit confusing because the video video outputs are mirrored, or the HDMI outputs are mirrored when you're in windowing mode, but that's just the video. So the audio is actually independently routable.
So if I have, let's say I'm doing a quad view for all of the HDMI inputs being quad viewed onto the HDMI outputs, I don't want to hear all 4 of those audio sources. So I can choose which one of those HDMI inputs, if any, that I want to use the audio from. So I can use HDMI input 3's audio and route that to HDMI output 1 and 2. And those will then also, that audio will also appear on analog outputs 1 and 2. Even if I'm in matrix switching mode, I can have HDMI input 1 going to HDMI output 1, and audio from HDMI input 4 going to HDMI output 1. And that audio from HDMI 4 going to HDMI output 1 will also be on analog audio output 1.
Okay.
That's pretty good timing. We're just about to the top of the hour.
Beautiful. I guess I did have a note about mounting hardware. You did mention for the windowing processor and the PRO402, how those are compatible with our V-style mounting options.
Yes, our 2 smaller boxes here on top, those are V-style compatible. They don't ship with any mounting hardware. It depends on how you want to mount it and where you want to mount it, but they are compatible with all of our V-style mounting solutions, especially the under table brackets and the V-style trays.
And then the full rack width ones do ship with
They ship
rack
with rack
gears
gears.
that can be
Yep.
installed. Okay. I think there might be a couple of questions in here that I did not get to, so we can try and reach out to you and answer those, or if the hopefully we got everything answered, but if there wasn't, you can reach out to your kind of local AMX representative for those answers.
Yep, we'll have some, the quick start guide is available now on the website. The data sheet should be available here in the next day, maybe by the end of the day. And then the manuals are getting finishing touches, and those will be posted here soon as well. And those should be able to answer all your questions. The manuals will also include all of the API information. You know, any information you need about how to program these things and how to use the API will all be part of the manual that should be published here shortly.
Thanks again, Jeff and Colin, for this very informative presentation, and most importantly, thanks to all of you for your time and greatly valued support in attending today's launch. We hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Take care.
All right. Thank you, Lane. Thanks, everyone.